everybody.
Hi, friends. Well, from beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah,
It's Thank God I'm Atheist.
the podcast.
I'm Frank Feldman.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And coming up on the show today, Dan, later on, we're going to be hearing your conversation with Terry Daniel.
Dr. Death, baby.
Is that what she goes by? Is that her nickname?
Yeah, her podcast is Ask Dr. Death. She's great. She's a friend. And we're going to talk about death, dying, and a whole bunch of stuff. So,
Well, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah. Excited to hear that conversation. But first, Dan, guess what?
What you got?
American Christians, they always know. They know how to get upset about things.
They're the best kind of people when it comes to that.
Practiced outrage about dumb things more than just about anybody, probably. Well, this is the 1 Million Moms group,
Which has a total of like a couple hundred moms in it.
but there's a million of them, Dan.
There's a million in spirit.
They're anti-LGBT hate group sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Basically, that's the main thing is protect the kids from the gays.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so this group of American Christians is upset about an Australian television ad. I don't know why they feel that it's their business, but whatever. eHarmony in Australia has put out an ad that has two gay men in it.
How dare they? A dating app?
And gay guys, they don't want it. They are kind of barking up the wrong tree. Like,
do they even allow gay guys to date in Australia? Is that even allowed?
well, I mean, if this group had their way, they would not.
Right.
The ad, it's kind of breakfast time. It looks like one of them is making toast, and the other one, and they like hug, I think, at one point. I watched the ad. There really nothing scandalous in this ad at all. Nothing. Oh, one of them like reaches in and like I guess one feeds. They kind of feed each other this toast.
So
and
gross.
Then one of them wipes the other one's mouth. Right? It's all cute. It's all sweet.
I can't even handle it.
Well, this is what they 1 Million Moms has to say.
Yeah.
It's the site's attempt to normalize and glorify the LGBTQ lifestyle by featuring a homosexual couple hugging, feeding each other, and wiping the other one's mouth.
Yeah.
By promoting same-sex relationships, eHarmony wants to make it clear where they stand on this controversial topic instead of remaining neutral in the culture war. Does anybody?
Ladies,
is it controversial? Is
the war
homosexuality?
is over.
Yeah, like
we don't need to normalize it anymore. It's normal.
Like I get that you still don't like it, but there's no controversy here. And she continues.
That ship sailed.
The 1 Million Mom herself. She continues. There is concern about the way this advertisement is pushing the LGBTQ agenda. But an even greater concern is that the commercial is airing when children are likely watching television. This eHarmony ad brainwashes children and adults by desensitizing them and convincing them that homosexuality is natural, when in reality it is an unnatural love that is forbidden by Scripture, just like love rooted in adultery is forbidden.
Oh,
homosexuality is immoral.
I love the idea that like a kid's going to see a man wiping another man's mouth and just start to cry out uncontrollably. Like, I don't understand. I thought this was just for mommies and daddies.
Well, or worse, now the child sees two gay men, you know, being
doing
affectionate,
boring things
with each
like
other,
feeding each other
as normal. Dan, this is not normal.
Yeah, at any moment they might look at that and think to themselves, "Oh, that's okay."
Right.
Wouldn't that be the worst?
That would be the worst. I also just love the idea that it's like that this is eHarmony's attempt to
push the gay agenda.
To push the gay agenda, exactly.
Right.
When no, that's not what they're trying to do. They're just trying to appeal to, a customer
They're trying to
base.
get the gay dollars is what they're trying to do.
That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
This is already out there, guys.
Yeah, you're way too late.
No,
You are so too late to this game.
The time for this propaganda was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not propaganda anymore. It's just advertising.
Sad. That's sad. They missed the boat. Well, it's funny. I think one of the themes of our show is that Christians, and especially like American Christians, cannot see past the nose on their face. Like they do not know that there's anybody else in the world other than like the demons that they imagine we are, and that they imagine lurking behind every corner of their house. And nowhere is that better demonstrated than by when they start to try to make laws. So in your old stomping grounds of Oklahoma, a lawmaker has put forward a bill that will likely never see the light of day as a law, but I think it's instructive about where these people's brains are. Or if they have brains, I don't know. There's a question there. There's some question as to whether or not there is brain involved in this. But this bill is particularly special. Basically, the bill says that teachers cannot offend the sincerely held religious beliefs of students. That's the entire crux of the bill. Okay, that sounds all well and good on first blush, but it's going to be problematic instantly. Right now, already, it's literally, and obviously this is a bill crafted to try and protect Christian children from hearing about evolution or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, this is all about Christian children, but man, are you not thinking through the consequences of this? Because good Christian teachers may just encounter an atheist student or a, God forbid, Satanist student, or even just a goddamn, a Hindu student or a Muslim student. Right. And literally the way this bill is worded is that any teacher who offends the sincerely held religious beliefs of a student is liable, not only just like, this isn't just some little thing. They can be punished by fines of $10,000 per incident per individual.
What? Oh my God.
I can't see this actually prevailing as a law, but holy shit, will they be in trouble if they actually make this stuff happen?
That's just the worst thing.
You're just playing right into Lucian Greaves' hands at that point. You are just that is just a playground for anyone who's not Christian. Meanwhile, all of these teachers would be just obviously frozen. You couldn't say anything in class because you don't know what the sincerely held beliefs of all of your students are.
Right.
How the hell do you determine that? Yes, you know that most of them are going to be Christian, and you know that you can't say anything about anything that, you definitely can't say anything about gay people or trans people. This bill was put forward by a guy named Rob Standridge, who at other times has made news just trying to ban books. He tried to ban all books with sexual content from public school libraries, which I'm pretty sure just means anybody that has any book that has gay folks or trans folks.
That's the target, but it's gonna take more books out than just that.
Yeah, he recently posted on Facebook about his desire to get rid of Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye because he's claiming it's because it contains a rape scene, I'm guessing it's because it contains, you know, non-white people. That's probably closer to the mark. Anyway, that's where they're at. They want literally the other thing that baffles me about this law, this bill, is that they don't see that they are literally the Taliban.
Yeah.
How do they not see that they are literally doing exactly the thing that is barbaric in Pakistan or in, you know, Bangladesh or in any of these places where, you know, if you offend the religious sensibilities of somebody, you can, you know, you're liable to the law. How do they not see that they are literally the same as the Taliban?
Honestly, like if you just took stories of the Taliban and swapped out, you know, Islam and put in Christianity and Taliban and put in, you know, I don't know,
could you tell
1
the
million
difference?
moms, they would love it.
You literally couldn't tell the difference between if you just change out a few of the key words, Allah becomes Jesus or whatever.
Yeah.
They would not know that they were supporting Sharia law.
Right. They would love it. It's what
they'd
they're
be
fighting
like,
for
yes,
in this country. Right?
Everything about that is right.
Yeah. Well, Dan.
Yeah.
Kind of a story here that, like, sort of at first blush, like I was like, oh, well, I might be on this church's side. I hate it when that happens, right? But this is the story of a church in Oregon, in a smaller town. It doesn't sound like a very big place. Where's the name of the place? That's how important. Brookings is the name of the town.
Okay.
Brookings, Oregon. The church is suing the town of Brookings after the town has limited the number of free meal sessions that they can conduct a week, right? So the church has been giving out like free meals like 6 or 7 days a week during this like COVID and whatnot.
Just to people who are
people who are out
insecure.
of work, people who they need a meal, right?
Sure.
And it's bringing a bit of traffic around to the church, and therein lies the problem, right? The neighbors in the, I assume, residential area around this church don't like the amount of traffic that's coming in and out of this church now, right?
And it's all ugly, awful poor people. Gross.
It's really the worst. And upwards of 70 people, Dan, every day are coming through, and that's about right. And it's just it's a lot of traffic for a town of 6,700 people. And so the town council has sort of made this rule to kind of try to find some balance, right? They're like, well, we have this disturbance that is happening in an area where there wouldn't normally be. No one would normally expect this much activity at a church in this neighborhood, right? And so the people who live here feel bothered, and that upsets me, right? Because it's like, well, come on, right? Like, it's for a good cause. Who, like, 70 people are coming through? Like, okay, that's not that many. Yeah. So you guys need to shut up and have a little bit of, like, you know, a little charity and compassion, right, in your hearts. Sure. But then, of course, the church is suing on the grounds of their rights as a church to do whatever the fuck they want. And how dare this town try to regulate, you know, anything having to do with a church.
Right.
And it's like, well, fuck you, church. And they're Episcopalians, so I'm even more upset. I like to like Episcopalians, and now I'm mad at some. That's the worst part of this story.
Well, there you go. Brookings Episcopal Church. Why just try and feed people. Don't try to get away with everything.
I know. Just like pack it up, put it in some vans. It's only 70 meals, right?
Yeah.
Drive it to a park. Do it there.
Do it on the beach. I just looked it up. It's a beach town.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll love it. The sand will probably get in everything, but like.
But that's the way of beach towns.
Oh, I bet it's beautiful.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oregon coast.
Oh yeah, you
Little
don't get
beach
better
town?
than that.
Sounds like paradise.
Yeah.
Except for they've got a lot of hungry people. Well, at least 70.
Yeah, apparently.
So, yeah.
Apparently. All right. Well, hopefully they're able to continue feeding folks that need food. That's a
I
nice
know.
thing.
Like the city council needed to find a different balance here, right?
Right?
Like this,
Literally,
this is a
like
tough one.
somebody on the city council lives next door to that church and is just bugged.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
And the speed bump just isn't working. you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And the flashing slow down sign has been is annoying people.
It's
just going off constantly.
It's
Too
ruining
fast,
the
it
Pacific
keeps
Coast
saying.
Highway.
Just
It is
keeps
just
flashing.
ruining it.
Too fast, and a frowny face. Have you seen the ones with the frowny face on it?
Oh Lord. Well, I'm gonna whisk us away to Norway.
Ooh.
Now
I'd love to go to Norway.
yeah, me too. It's a jewel of Scandinavia.
Yeah.
Is what I assume. I've never been there. Been to Sweden. Anyway, Norway is not just fjords. There are people there too, and some of those people, surprisingly, still are religious. Not a lot, but some. It's one of the least religious countries in the world. But they still have some.
Yeah.
And the way that Norway works is a little weird, which is that literally all the religions are subsidized by taxpayers. Literally all of them. If you've got more than like 50 people registered, then you can apply for a state grant. So,
Really? Okay.
yeah. So like there are more than 800 different religious groups receiving this. Some, I think you can actually have a secular group and still get it within certain guidelines.
Okay.
But there are guidelines. They're actually nice guidelines. So for instance, the way that the law reads, quote, if a religious or philosophical community or individuals acting on behalf of the community commits violence or coercion, makes threats, violates children's rights, violates statutory discrimination prohibitions, or in other ways seriously violates the rights and freedoms of others, that society may be denied grants or grants may be suspended.
Okay.
So that's nice. Obviously when you have a very secular state that's giving money to churches, they're going to have some good rules about it. Well, you might want to focus in on that coercion thing because there are some there are some religions that practice that coercion, namely the Jehovah's Witnesses, who, as you know, have a very strict and sort of on the books rule about shunning people who leave their ranks.
Yeah.
So, which is like the worst thing. That is such bullshit. Anyway, Norway has decided that is indeed a violation of those rules and has decided to withdraw its grants, which, by the way, is amounts to almost $2 million in US dollars.
Really?
16 million Norwegian kroner.
Wow. Huh.
So,
well, good.
yeah,
I
I think that's the right thing to do. Because the reasoning is that this shunning thing as a practice, because what happens is if you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, there's your family, your friends, everybody is supposed to kind of cut ties with you. If you're still living in the household, they don't have to kick you out, but you're not allowed to see grandma and grandpa. You're not allowed to see anybody else. You are shunned.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a deep emotional manipulation. It is a coercion.
Yes.
And it is not and Norway is saying fuck off about it.
Good for them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm happy about that.
Very good. All right. Well, back here in these United States, Dan, there's a man by the name of Garrett Soldano who's running for governor in Michigan. He's a Republican. And he's got some things to say about abortions and specifically rape victims.
Oh God. Trigger warning. I'm already triggered, but
yeah, trigger
brace
warning
yourselves.
might actually be really important for this one because he's saying that rape victims shouldn't have abortions because, quote, they don't know that little baby inside them may be the next president or maybe the next person who changes humanity, right? Which,
right.
I don't know, it seems there is an age requirement. Like this fetus is not going to be the next president. But to that, I also go, well, could also be the next Hitler or a serial killer.
They always make that argument, and it's such a bad argument because A, no, it's not going to be, and B, yeah, remarkable goes in a lot of different directions, my friend.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, because, it's a gamble. Yeah, that kid could be anything.
Also, not for nothing, but like if we're going to just talk about sort of the genetic lottery that's happening, that would be the child of a rapist.
Yeah.
What genes is that dude passing on?
Yeah. No, it's really sick, and he's said some awful things, surprise, surprise, in the past about abortion. Let's see. He says, "How about we?" This is not this instance, but this is some comment earlier this year or last year rather. How about we start inspiring women in the culture to let them understand and know how heroic they are and how unbelievable they are that God put them in this moment.
How about you
that
shut
God
the fuck
had
up
them raped, right? Is
and
what he's saying.
how about you shut the fuck up and let them be heroes in the way that they want to be heroes, or not be heroes, or whatever. None of your business. How about that?
Yeah, I haven't been following. Surprise, surprise, the Michigan gubernatorial race. So I don't know what kind of chance in hell this guy has. But this is some alarming, awful shit.
Yeah.
This is a
you've
terrible
gotta be a
person.
real monster.
Yeah.
To think that that's an okay line of reasoning.
And obviously his comments are being condemned. No surprise there by politicians in the state, Democrats,
Right.
calling
you
his
know
comments
what? Look for the people who
disgusting
aren't condemning. That's who we need to be looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really rough stuff.
As a matter of fact, if you're a Michigander out there listening to us, write into the different candidates and ask them how they feel about that statement.
I think it's
try and get them on the record and try and get them to say what their feelings are about it.
Yeah, especially the Republican ones.
Yeah.
Right into those Republican ones because they're the ones who are going to probably say something awful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
good
just
Lord.
just freakish.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk about this. This is a very interesting thing to me. I don't know about you, Frank, but in my world, there's when we talk about, you and I were raised Mormon, which means that you and I were males, so we weren't given this much. But there's a concept of modest clothing that is usually spoken about when in regards to women, because obviously that's very important to cover up the ladies.
Can't have guys having immoral thoughts, ladies.
Right? Yeah, women,
because of your shoulders, ladies.
Stop trying to tempt us with your fashion. Anyway, I've always thought it's just a weird concept in general, but like it gets really weird when you start to look at a lot of the regressive religions, what their idea of modesty actually is. Like, so a Tennessee-based healthcare provider has just recently had to pay a settlement to a nurse that they hired. They hired a woman named Melinda Babineau in 2019, and then she informed them that because she is an apostolic Pentecostal, she was going to have to wear a skirt instead of pant scrubs. She was going to have to wear a scrub skirt.
Is that cool? Like
medically?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why it would be important one way or the other than like, you know, the pictures that I'm seeing of scrub skirts mean that you couldn't run very effectively in it or whatever. So, you know, if somebody was
what about squirts?
Flatlining or something, you might
would some squirts work?
I know, right? Like, what's really weird is, to my mind, when we're talking about modesty, a pant seems more, I mean, you're less likely to see naughty bits in a pant than in a skirt.
You're not going to see leg at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas skirts are about a little leg, right? I mean, how long is this? Is it like floor length?
The skirts that I'm seeing are mid-calf sort of things.
Oh, so not sexy.
No, but
sexy
still
nurse.
But still, like those, you know, salacious ankles are being shown. Anyway, I just thought that was so weird. Like, what an arbitrary rule that, you know, it's so important that I can wear this bit of clothing because it's a girl bit of clothing, but not that bit of clothing, which, you know, fashion. Now you're just talking fashion. There's nothing in the Bible that talks about scrubs for medical personnel. You know what I mean? Like, well, what an absurd thing to take a stand on.
I honestly, like, if you're going to get that fussy about things, why are you working outside of the home, woman?
Right? Yes, madam.
I mean,
shouldn't you be raising children and making sandwiches for your hardworking husband? What's going on?
No, I mean, like, it's interesting how they pick and choose like the parts of traditional Christianity that they want, right? Like, yeah, a skirt. What the fuck?
But
who cares?
In no way can a skirt be considered traditional Christianity.
Well, okay,
it's obvious. No, but what I'm saying is that is like just American tradition. That is cultural tradition. Right. Not religious tradition, and they've just latched onto it and decided that now it's, oh no, but that's it is a fundamental tenet of our religion, and now she gets paid. So they rescinded their offer, the job offer, when she refused to wear the clothes that you wear for the job, and now you know, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission said that no, that was an accommodation that they needed to make, and so she walked away with $75,000.
Wow! All right. I mean, it does
seem like a reasonable accommodation.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like that hard to make that accommodation, but still, it's just absurd.
Yeah, she's absurd.
She's absurd. They're all absurd,
and they handled it the wrong way.
Yeah. It's true. If you out there are absurd and you'd like to write in and tell us about how, or if you'd like to tell us what you're wearing at work today, feel free to write into us, podcast@thankgodimatheist.com.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. The telephone number is 424-666-8442. Stick around. We've got some emails and voicemail coming right up.
Well, Frank.
Dan.
I don't know if have you ever heard of Patriot Street Fighter Scott McKay?
No, I don't think so.
He's been touring with I feel like he's been touring, like he goes to like the rallies with the My Pillow guy and all this stuff.
Yeah.
He's rising up through the ranks of the sort of crazed MAGA QAnon obsessed. Yeah, it's like that world has become its own universe, And he's
Yeah.
becoming one of the he's sort of fashioned himself into one of the celebrities of that world.
Oh, that's great. Good for him. You know,
And I think he's got a podcast, or maybe it's a video thing. I don't know. I'm looking at a video. It's Cuckoo Bananas,
Yeah.
American Media Periscope. So this is a Periscope, I guess. That's a thing.
Oh, Periscope. I remember that.
Anyway, he has strung together a series of words that are English words. I'm challenged to decipher any of what you're about to hear, but
Okay.
but please enjoy.
Our style of delivery, specifically mine here, is really a combination of a full throttle shitstorm runs into a tempest stirred up by a earthquake or hurricane that leads to an earthquake coming down on top of the political elite ruling class and the religious order run by the Satanists on the planet. That's what this whole machine was designed to do, is to be a global attack weapon. And the tipping point is that very weapon, and this Revolution Radio seat is the information warfare platform from whereby we conduct this war on these people that have done nothing to enrich humanity, simply to rape and destroy humanity on all levels. You know what? I know this sounds sensational, but all I can tell you is the longer you listen to me here, the more you're going to agree with me, even if you were a blind Satanist, left-wing Democrat that cannot think for themselves. If you're around this show long enough, it's going to have an impact, whether you understand it or believe it or not, because the ethereal realm delivers information in an energetic form. And if your frequency is tuned for truth, it's going to be an acquiescent experience for you. And I will say congratulations. Those of you that it cannot reach, well, God love you or God help you, because I will not help you from this seat. My intention is to smoke you out, put you in front of we the people for the ultimate judgment. And that will be the takedown of your philosophy and ideology that historically and backed up with empirical data has done nothing but destroy humanity for hundreds or thousands of years. That political or social ideology is going to end up on the ash heap, buried so deep in this planet, you would think it was on another planet to even get to it.
Did you get all that, Frank?
Oh, yeah. It's obvious, Dan.
It's clear as
obvious
day
to
what
me.
he's saying. But just in case I did, just so that I know that you understood, will you tell me what the fuck he was going on about?
Well, since like 1,000 years ago, there's like all this empirical evidence, right? That like shows that the leftists,
The Satanists.
the Satanists, leftist political machine,
who aren't able to think,
Yeah.
but yet are somehow espousing an ideology meant to bring down humanity.
but they can't think. Yeah.
But they're not able to. It's amazing. I will say this one thing that he does get right, at least in terms of American leftism, is how ineffective they are at their goals. Because we have not yet brought down humanity, and we have been working for a long time on this.
The American left has been working to bring down humanity for about 1,000 years now.
About
And
1,000 years we've
about
been
1,000
trying to do
years.
this.
And we just can't get our shit together because we can't think. No thinking.
It's hard to do when your brain don't work.
I just wonder whose brain is not working in this scenario.
Oh, you needn't wonder. I think we know.
Like, does he just talk like that so that does he think he's sounding smart by talking like that?
I think so. I think
And that by being impossible to understand, because that's been how he's picked out smart people in his life, is that he can't understand what they're saying.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so he just strings a bunch of words together that make literally no sense. And he must be smart, right?
You think? I'm not
That's my
convinced of
take.
that.
That's my take. He seems very
I feel
smart.
like
to me.
I feel like he has a capacity for gathering vocabulary without actually being able to use it in any kind of coherent manner.
Oh, golly. Well, that's fun.
Oh.
Thanks for sharing,
Well,
Dan.
all I can say is I did not have an acquiescent experience. That's all. All right. Well, we had some folks write into us and call into us, so I'm gonna get to that. Katie wrote in and said, in episode 529, you talked about a football coach who was eventually fired for having the team pray on the field.
Mm-hmm.
The high school football coach at the high school where I teach has done this for years.
Wow.
I believe Katie's from, I cut it out. Kansas or Kentucky or one of the middle of the country K states, I think. Anyway, usually the visiting team and often members of the crowd participate too. As far as I know, no one seems to have a problem with it. Or if they do, they know they'd get their house egged and TP'd for questioning it. I've heard many people remarking how nice it was to see the team praying. Religion's a big part of this coach's persona and coaching style too. Every year, the football t-shirts have faith, family, football, and God is the main topic in the coach's game day speeches. Katie goes on, the high school principals and superintendent are on the liberal side, so I'm sure they see the problem with praying on the football field, but they have never tried to put a stop to it. I've thought about reporting this to outside entities multiple times, but I feel that this would either not do any good or it would somehow end up biting me in the ass. I'm hopefully on my way out of this town after 9 long years, but I hope sometime in the future I hear about the football coach being forced to stop making the team pray on the field or perhaps being fired for it.
And you can report to Freedom from Religion Foundation anonymously, right? They'll protect you.
Yeah, I think so. You know, Katie, it might not be a bad idea if you're interested. And believe me, I get that. Like you do, I get that. Like this is probably a hassle that you don't necessarily need in your life, and B, that you could be putting yourself in jeopardy. But you might as well contact the FFRF, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and just talk to them about the situation. They'll be like totally willing to. You know, they'll listen to your predicament, and if you don't want to pursue it, you know, if they'll tell you what will be involved in pursuing it, and how much or little you would need to be involved, and then you can just decide your involvement. I think they're very cool to work with, so I'd give them a call if I were you. Just if nothing else, get it on their radar. Let them know that it's happening, and then you know it's not, you don't have to be involved, but you can but they can sort of become aware, and maybe they can find somebody else in the community that wants to pursue it. Anyway,
I think that's a great idea.
Rob wrote into us, "Hey Frank and Dan, I have a couple of thoughts about this week's segment about Jerry Falwell Jr. You'll recall, Frank, that we talked about J. Fall Jew, and his decline from grace and prominence." Rob says, "What does his career trajectory look like from here? I think I would be surprised if his father didn't leave him what the rest of us would consider fuck off money. And any of us, were we in his shoes, would probably retire to some place where we could drink and bang pool boys in peace or whatever. That said, it also seems like having fuck off money breaks the human brain in a way that requires said human to think that they should continue to acquire more money. So I could see him deciding to find a new grift, and given his behavior, I would not be surprised if he decided to out himself as an atheist. I strongly suspect he is one, given that he knows how the sausage is made, as it were. If this is the case, I don't believe for a second that it would be of any use to our movement. I think much like Trump, he doesn't have any stronger belief than whatever is good for me and mine is okay. To that end, we should issue some sort of preemptive proclamation that should we issue some sort of preemptive proclamation that he isn't one of ours?" Cute. No, I don't think we'll see him having his atheist coming out moment. I don't think so. I think he, from what I've read, he's a genuine believer. He just He's not good at it. He's not religious.
Right.
But there's something in him. He's hanging on to something.
Yeah.
I think his parents are whispering in his ear from the great beyond. Anyway, we did have a voicemail, did we not?
We do, yeah. And this caller is responding to our conversation, I believe, 2 episodes ago, where we were talking about some curriculum in California that about and you were bringing up the Mayan.
They called them affirmations.
Affirmations, that's right.
These were just it was a Yoruba religion and like the Mayan or Aztec religion, something like that. And and they were and these weren't this wasn't required in any class, but it was like part of the possible reading that could I don't know. Anyway, the Christian parents were all up in arms, and we said, just get rid of it. It's fine. You know, you don't need to have
it's religious-y, it's beliefy, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you shouldn't have religion in schools. Anyway, this caller has something to say about it.
And we had a couple voicemails about this, actually.
Yeah.
And so yeah. Let's have a listen to what they have to say.
Hi, Frank, Dan, and or guest. This is River from Texas. I wanted to call about your conversation at the end of this week's episode, talking about the Yoruba and Aztec or Mayan affirmations being used in an elective ethnic studies class in California. And I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why. I'm actually a woman with a multicultural gender studies minor at a university, and I just took a class that was kind of basically women's studies and also ethnic studies. And one of the things throughout that course was that I was asked to put myself in the position of a person who is very much not like me, who is a white person. And that was difficult and uncomfortable. And I think that actually that was a good thing for me to go through and for me to experience. And so I think for your Latinx students and your West African students, I think this is something that I think these affirmations are going to help them feel enfranchised and seen and valued in their curriculum in a way that they won't throughout most of their academic life. And for the white students taking the class, it's an opportunity to try and see the world through a perspective that is not yours and to gain understanding in that way. So I think it's actually a good thing, assuming it is not done religiously and is done academically, which I think it can be. I'm also going to disagree with you about the yoga thing because I think that taking all of the work of yoga and all the poses of yoga, which is a specific ethnic religious practice, and taking away all of the specific religious and ethnic language and making it palatable to white Christians, that is the definition of cultural appropriation. So I'm going to push back on that one. Like, have yoga or don't, but don't take yoga and wash the brown people off of it. Anyways, just thought I'd share.
Well, thanks, River.
Yeah.
I think those are very good points. The yoga thing was that we talked about, just because so many Christians freak out about their kids doing yoga in school, just call it stretching class and take away the Sanskrit words. I agree with the comment that's whitewashing something that does have a cultural context to it that probably shouldn't be expunged. So, okay. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I my perspective on yoga is I want the bending. I want the balance.
Yeah.
This has been my stance for a really long time. And I appreciate the perspective, River, about washing the brown people off. It is, it may be a little insensitive to want yoga without all of that. But I mean, and I don't do yoga, right? Because I know that somebody's going to say namaste to me and I'm going to be annoyed. Right. And I just don't want that.
Yeah.
So I don't go.
But and also, yes, there's a cultural appropriation question, but there's also like a physical fitness question. And can't we just take useful practices from all over the place and, remove I don't want to erase any culture, but also like one of the things that we do as a society is take what's useful and make it useful. And sometimes that kind of divorces it from a context.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to feel about that. There's a lot there. There's a lot to think about in all of that.
Yeah.
Anywho,
but good points, and thank you.
Thank you for the call. Yeah, absolutely. One more email. This is from John. Hello, Frank and Dan. John here from the Memphis area. I recently found your podcast, and I'm enjoying it very much. I'm an ex-evangelical of the charismatic flavor of Christianity.
Oh, wow.
I left my beliefs behind around 3 years ago. I'm still a closeted atheist. Most of my friends and family are Christians, including my wife and immediate family on both sides, so I kind of depend on the online atheist community for company. I love the idea of the person who wrote in saying that they leave atheist books in the little free library boxes. That's awesome. I'm going to buy some atheist books just for that purpose. Chances are they will be taken out and burned by some well-meaning Baptist, but who knows? Maybe there is someone secretly questioning their beliefs, and it might help them. Thank you for the great content, and I look forward to listening to more episodes.
That's great.
And by the way, even in rural Tennessee, there are other atheists. So like you could look around, poke around out there, and maybe find a group that you can meet up with and share stories, share the war stories, etc. So we had some folks be generous and give unto us, and I'm going to start us off. We had Celine, who gave us a one-time donation over on PayPal. Celine, you are now a deacon. You have magic powers. That's how this works. Congratulations unto you, and amen on that. Frank, do you have some folks to thank?
I do indeed, Dan. We have a new teacher over on Patreon by the name of Ilona. So thank you.
Wow.
And if you'd like to join these kind folk, you can do so. Just go to our website, thankgodimatheist.com, and click on the support tab. And then there's options.
Yeah. You choose the level that you support us. It's not like we're making you do a specific level. But yeah, cool stuff happens.
Yeah.
When you do it, you get to be magic.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want that?
Absolutely. And of course, we have our top donor to thank, Dan, our Lord and Savior, Demonium. Thanks so much. More show coming up.
Well, Frank, you weren't able to join us, but I had a wonderful conversation with our friend Terry Daniel.
That's wonderful.
And we're gonna just launch right into that.
Let's have a listen.
Well, today we're going to talk to Terry Daniel. Now, Terry, you and I have, we've been friends for a minute. We first met because you were a listener to one or the other of my shows.
Big fan. Yep.
But I've been on your show, and you've been on shows. Anyway, hi, welcome to Thank God I'm Atheist. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, we've been in the podcast universe a little bit.
In the realm, in the podosphere, as they say.
Potting around together.
Yes, indeed. Now, Terry, tell us a little bit about you. You are an end-of-life care professional. You are a minister, that's a chaplain. Is that the word? What are you? Technically.
What am I? What am I? Why am I here? I am technically called a chaplain, and that's a kind of a good place to start because it's not a minister, it's not anything like that, and I'm not religious, and I have no religious affiliation of any kind. But I go and I work for a hospice, and I go and be with people who are dying, and I give them what is typically called spiritual care.
Yeah.
And, before all your listeners leave the room because I said that, what does that mean? Well, what it means to me is it's psychological care. I'm like a counselor. You know what when I started doing this work, I often thought of myself as Deanna Troi on Star Trek. Remember her? And so that's kind of what I am in the hospice universe, I guess.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that for those for those unlucky few who weren't Next Generation fans.
Maybe you could probably do that better than I could, but it was one of the iterations of Star Trek on TV, right? With Captain Picard.
That's right.
Right. And she was the ship's psychologist, I guess. But she was also like very compassionate and intuitive, and she would help people with their emotional problems. So I kind of do that on the Starship Death, I guess you could say.
Death's a tough beat. What brought you to death as a sort of life's work?
Death as life's work. That's a great title for a book.
There you go.
Well, most people who work in hospice and death care are there because they had a profound experience with death. And so people will tell you, I sat with my mother through her death, or my father committed suicide. For me, it was similar. It was my son's death. He died when he was 16 from a long illness, a rare metabolic disorder. And the process of being with him through the dying process was kind of amazing to me. Because watching someone die is kind of like watching someone be born, and there's just something going on there that's really big. And aside from my own personal grief and everything like that, I wanted to be around that also because death is not scary. It's not creepy. It's not threatening. It's not any of those things. And I realized that I really wanted people to not be afraid of it. And as I went through my years of getting established in this field and all the education and training that I got, I realized that the reason people are afraid of it is, guess what? Religion.
Interesting. When you say afraid of it, are you saying afraid of our own death or afraid of being around death when it happens to people around us?
Those two, plus there's even a third one, which is afraid of being dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's three things. There's our own death, there's someone else's death, and there's afraid of what happens after we die. And of course, if you're religious in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there's this fear of heaven and hell and judgment. So for most people who have a fear of death, that's what's really going on there. Now, fear of someone else dying, that's not fear of death. That's fear of loss. Your person you love is going to die. They're not going to be here anymore. So that's pretty obvious and pretty understandable. So I got really interested in working with people's religious beliefs about death, like what made them so fearful. A psychologist friend of mine once said, all neurosis is based in the fear of death. And I loved that because, if you think you're either going to be punished or you're going to disappear from the universe completely when you die, that's going to make you cling really hard to your assumptions and your beliefs and your attachments and all the stuff that you have in this life, and make the idea of leaving those things really difficult.
Yeah.
So that's, so I started out as a hospice volunteer, and then I went to school and got a bunch of degrees, and I became a chaplain, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. But I started noticing that the people I was working with all had these infantile Sunday school childhood beliefs about death and the afterlife. And, these were people in their 80s.
Yeah.
Who had a lifetime to do some critical thinking but never did.
Yeah,
And
I don't know if you know this. Critical thinking is hard. It hurts.
well, it hurts if people are raised like you were raised,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's a high stakes risk for that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if people are raised in a high demand religious environment, yeah, critical thinking will send you to hell.
Indeed.
Not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is hard. But for some people, it isn't hard. I was raised with no religion. My parents were Jewish, which didn't mean a whole lot of anything
Right.
to them. And, they were educated and intelligent, and they never indoctrinated me. So I feel like I got a leg up on a lot of other people.
Yeah, that's nice. You're lucky in that respect.
That's a blessing.
So getting back to these 80-year-olds who had never really processed the concept of death in any kind of critical way, what do you see as, because obviously the religious people would tell you that their beliefs on death, the concept that they're going to another life that they live on forever, and that in the next life they will be rewarded by their God for having been such good little boys and girls. They would say that is a boon to them. That is a point in their column in terms of like what's, a good thing in life. It sounds to me like you're saying that's not true.
Well, it depends on the person. If somebody has a lot of guilt and shame, which they all do, it's not really a boon, because when it comes down to it, that theology tells you that no matter what you do, you're a piece of shit, no matter what you do.
Right.
Right. So even if you believe in that, and you believe that you're going to get rewarded in heaven, when you're on your deathbed, assuming you believe in this theology, you're not really sure, are you?
Yeah, that's a big if. That's a big question mark.
Yeah, because God's going to judge you, and he knows all your little secrets, and all your sins, and you just don't know what he's going to decide. Even though you were a really good person, there was that time when I don't know what, you pitched pennies behind the barn, and, the 4,000 masturbation times that you did, it's like, God knows all of it. So, so people who believe that theology, I'm not going to say always, but a lot of times struggle with that. So just today, as a matter of fact, I was with a patient, a really feisty old lady who, lived alone all her life. She never got married, never have kids. She was a waitress for like 60 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And she was so cool and she still had that theology, but she didn't have it in a scary way. And she said to me today, I don't care where I go, I'll go up there or I'll go down there, wherever they want to send me. And whatever, as long as I'm not stuck in the middle. That's what she said to me today.
Oh man,
I loved it. I wrote it in her chart.
Yeah.
It's such a great thing to say. So it's not terrifying for everybody, but for most people who really, who have so much guilt and shame, and especially if you're raised in a religious cult where you've been told since you were a child that you're evil and God's watching, and there's all these rules and all this stuff going on, like rapture anxiety and the kinds of traumas that kids have in those environments. Yeah, death's going to be scary.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us have some sort of fear of death. Like, it's, one doesn't want to quote Shakespeare too much, but the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. Like that's been the big fear since humans realized that they were alive.
Or not. It depends which humans you're talking about, because some humans have a different view of death. Like there's a really famous quote from Socrates. I'll see if I can pull it up here. That says something like, what if death Or what if this life is just an illusion and death is the real life? Like, we don't know. I'm going to see if I can find that quote, because I'm not doing Socrates a service right now, but I do have it here on my computer somewhere, and I'll look for it.
I'm pretty sure
Or,
you were just talking about
there's
the
that-
Matrix just then.
Oh, well, and then there's that famous, I don't know where this comes from, but what if I'm a man dreaming a butterfly? What if I'm a man dreaming I'm a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming I'm a man?
Yeah.
What is reality? Who knows?
Well, but I mean, I think the uncertainty is the scariest part. You know what I mean? For a lot of people, not knowing is worse than is the worst possible outcome. So just having any answer, even if it's bullshit, might be a comfort to some, I suppose.
That is true. And the funny thing about uncertainty is this is why, one of the reasons why religions are so toxic, because they're feeding us a certainty.
Right.
And it's the certainty that's the problem.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I mean, that's why I like what this lady said. She said, whatever, I'll go wherever they want to send me, whoever they are.
They.
But whatever it was, she was at peace with it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And certainty is, I mean, in the field of religious studies, we call it orthodoxy.
Mm.
That's the problem when you say it's absolutely this or it's absolutely that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing about, it's funny because a lot of religious people, I think, imagine that atheists just believe, just think that they know better, and that they're my personal belief is that I'm guessing I just stop when I die. I'm guessing there's no, and this is something I think that you and I might differ a little bit on, but my guess is that I just don't, whatever the things are that are me just become, fodder for worms and plants and whatever. And I just stop, but I don't know.
Right. And I don't know is the best answer. Right. And so, I have always believed that consciousness can exist outside of the body. There are other dimensions besides the physical one that we inhabit inside this body in this physical world. And that we can visit those dimensions like we do in dreams.
Right.
Human beings, since way before there were any religions, have, talked about out-of-body experiences and mystical visions and all this kind of stuff. And, depictions of an afterlife. People have died and been resuscitated and reported, out-of-body, after-death experiences for 30,000 years. And I like to think that religions were created to put words to that.
Mm.
And so people were always, and that's why, like, human beings, they invent rituals and ceremonies and images of God. So one of the things I say a lot, you've probably heard me say this before, is that this idea of God or gods is actually a projected outward of what is inside of us. So that's why we have multiple gods: a fertility god, a warrior god, a god of the corn and the crops and the fire and the thunder, because inside of ourselves, we have all these. If we want to get pregnant and have a baby, we might, make an offering to a fertility god. Well, all that is just the inner mother, right?
Yeah.
The inner pregnant person or whatever. And so all of these, so human beings have these needs inside themselves that need attention when they want something, like, oh, I want the crops to grow. So I'm going to go out in the field and build a little statue of a little magical character and light it on fire and bring it some grapes and, do a little ceremony to bring the crops to success. Something about humans wants us to do that. And so, that in itself is kind of nice and kind of reasonable. The problem is when people who crave power and people with agendas get hold of that stuff, then they package it into dogmas and doctrines, and then they go marketing it all over the neighboring villages and turn it into a religion.
Yeah.
And then they start adding all this stupid stuff to it, like, heaven and hell and punishment and God as a humanoid creature that watches over you. And that's where it went south, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, before you know it, you've got dogmas and rules and laws and what you're allowed to wear and what you're allowed to eat, and then things have gone a little slaunch ways, if you ask me.
Okay, so I found the Socrates quote, and
okay.
who knows if it's really from Socrates, because it's on a meme, and memes are usually bullshit. But
yes,
right. So it says, "No one knows whether death may not even turn out to be the greatest blessings of human beings, and yet people fear it as if they knew for certain that it is the greatest evil."
Yeah,
maybe getting out of here is great.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I currently have shingles. I am right now a human being living with shingles.
Oh, sorry.
And yeah, death seems great.
Yeah.
Comparatively.
Well, and human life is it sucks. It's so difficult and painful, and all we want is love and happiness, peace, but we have to work so hard for it. So I certainly am not going to say that I know what happens after death, but even if it's nothingness is better than having shingles,
It can be. It can be.
There's the title for this episode.
There you go. There you go. So one of the reasons that we are talking about death right now is that you don't just go unto the dying folk to help them. It's like a death doula. Is that what you do? Anyway,
I don't call myself a death doula, but yes, that's definitely what I do. It's definitely part of it.
But you also, because you're a crazy person who likes to give herself too much work, you also organize a convention that is happening this June.
July, actually.
It's July, right? Yeah. It's one of the J ones. I know.
It's one of the J ones.
It's not like
right, which were, by the way, all
it's not
named
like I'm going to be there.
and those were all named after Roman gods, by the way, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, or emperors, but
June, July, August. Yeah, you're right. Gods and emperors. Juno, Julius. Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, so tell our listeners. I think there might be a lot of people who would be interested in your conference, and I want them to know about it and just know what you're going to be talking about in case they want to go.
Yes, thank you so much. So this is called the Conference on Death, Grief, and Belief, and it's taking place on a weekend, July 15th through 17th, and we have 2 keynote speakers. One of them on Friday night is Seth Andrews, who many of you know.
Yeah.
And on Saturday night, we have Frank and Dan from Thank God I'm Atheist, who are going to be there in person.
That's right.
And it will be in Portland, Oregon. And Frank and Dan are going to talk about a really interesting topic because this conference focuses on death, grief, and belief. Part of my work is I do grief counseling. A lot of my audience and followers are people who are struggling with bereavement, because not only are you afraid of punishment when you die, but if you have that toxic belief system when your loved one dies, perhaps from suicide, you might think they're in hell. And so there are a lot of people who are struggling with overcoming that, and that's the grief piece. And Dan, you were telling me the other day that when you leave your religion, when you deconstruct, there's a grief process that you go through.
Deep grief process. Yeah. And just like with when you encounter a death, you lose people that you love a lot of the time. It is a very similar parallel. It's an interesting parallel.
It's a really interesting parallel, and it's there's in the grief counseling world, there's something called disenfranchised grief. And what that is if, let's say, the person you love died while robbing a convenience store, and he went in there with a gun and the police killed him. Or
I feel like
he's a terrorist.
Know my family. How did you do that?
Yeah, like that. Or, or back in the AIDS, at the peak of AIDS, he was gay and he died from AIDS. Or maybe, he's the guy who shoots the kids in the school and you're his mother and you're still grieving that guy because he was your son.
Right.
So this is disenfranchised grief. This is grief that is not supported or recognized by society.
Yeah.
So when you leave your religion, you're not going to get support from those people that you love.
Yeah. You are literally, that is a great point. Your grief, the thing that is currently the most painful part of your life, you don't get all of the people that you're used to turning to for support, for love, for help are going to turn their backs on you.
That's exactly right. So one of the things that causes complications and obstructions in grief healing is not having family or social support. So here you are, you've left the cult that you were raised in, you've left belief altogether, whatever the story is, and you have no community support. And it takes years to find a new community.
Yeah.
So you want to go to your parents and your friends, the people you grew up with, and all they're going to do is talk you out of your decision.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to support you in your grief process.
It's a very special kind of grieving. It's its own brand of thing. And a lot of people have to do it while pretending to be something that they're not. I mean, a lot of people leave a religion in their minds, in their hearts. They know it's not true. And then because they know how bad the social repercussions would be, they stay physically and, they have to lie. They have to live a totally different life. That's, that right there is, for me, an interesting parallel to when religious people lose a loved one. I don't know if this is a thing that's very prominent in Mormon religion, where you lose a loved person and then you have to pretend like you're not grieving.
Yeah.
Because you're there, because they're going to a better place. And if you grieve, it's like you're not acknowledging how great what's happened to them is.
Right, because Christianity, this is my opinion here, speaking as a chaplain, Christianity is all about separating us from our natural selves, from our own intuition. I mean, there's even a Bible verse that says, do not trust your own wisdom or your own knowledge.
Yeah.
Do not trust your own counsel. I don't know the exact wording.
Lean not to your own understanding, something like that.
That's the one. Yes. That's it.
Yeah. How fucked up is that? Like, just make sure that you don't trust you. Of all the people you could trust, just make sure that you don't trust yourself.
Right. Trust the priest who rapes little boys, you know. Trust the words of Paul, who, wrote these words 2,000 years ago. No, what? And so you're so messed up. And there's actually a thing in evangelical Christianity called appropriate Christian grief. And it's exactly what you describe. Appropriate Christian grief means that you're not sad because they're going to be in heaven with Jesus on a throne and pearly gates and golden streets. And, they're getting their reward in glory or whatever. Yeah. And so, I guess Mormons feel that way too. If you're sad because someone died, then your faith isn't strong enough. But what about these 1,700 planets, that we're going to when we die, according to the Mormons? Like, aren't you happy that he has his own planet?
Right. Grieving and death and all of that. It is a crazy important discussion to have that people refuse to have.
Yeah. And this is why they refuse to have it. Because if they have this discussion, all these stupid, infantile beliefs about Satan and God judging and all of this are going to come up in the conversation. And that's a whole lot to unpack with your 80-year-old mother.
Yeah. It really is.
And here's what happens, when people are 80. So generally, this is what happens. A person is born into a religious family. They start getting their religious education when they're 2-3 years old. They go to Sunday school. They are told the Bible stories. And you're a kid. You can tell a 3-year-old anything.
Uh-huh.
And they'll believe you. Elephants can fly. Puppies can talk. There's fairy godmothers who can turn a pumpkin into a carriage and all that stuff. And of course, a 3-year-old's going to believe that. And so that gets inculcated into us when we're 3. And then we just kind of go through our lives. Then we got Santa Claus added a little bit later into it. And why would we question it? Because it's just brainwashed into us. It never ever changes. Because why would we think about it? Unless you're an unusual person like me, who was always thinking about this stuff, even when I was 12. But most people just don't think about it. You go about your life. And then one day you're 50 and you have prostate cancer, or your kid dies, or some horrible thing happens. And then all of that comes up and you go, well, wait a minute. I thought there was this God in the sky who would protect me if I went to church and prayed and did all these things. And where is that God now? Why do I have cancer?
Yeah.
That's not supposed to happen. And only then do people start to question it. So death and loss is the trigger, or can be the trigger, for questioning. And that's great when that happens. What sometimes happens, though, is people don't question. So they want to cling and be attached to that belief system. And then they get mad at God. And then it becomes this whole other thing of like, well, God, you let me down.
Right.
And how am I going to reckon with that? Instead of letting go of that idea of God, they're going to hold on to that idea of God and then fight with it.
Yeah. The whole thing is just it's a very tricky realm to dabble in, because again, it's, you have to start by facing our most primal fears and then move from there. Like it's not the funnest game in the world. But I think it's such an important thing for us to do, for us to acknowledge, to like look at death and ask ourselves deep questions about death. And I think that's why I love that you're doing this conference. I think that's what's so important about it. And you have some really interesting people coming to talk at the conference. Will you talk a little bit about who you've got coming and what they're going to talk about?
So first of all, I just wanted to tell you, Dan, how grateful I am that you and Frank are going to be there. It's so exciting. And I'm happy that I get to introduce you to a new audience that may not already know who you are, and then bring your audience into, some of these people that I'm about to mention here, who they may have never heard of before.
Right.
So Seth Andrews, of course, everybody knows him. Clint Haycock, I don't know if you know him. He's based in the UK, and he was a former Bible college teacher, evangelical, who deconstructed, and he has a podcast called the Mind Shift Podcast.
Oh yeah.
And he's gonna talk about 16 steps for leaving religion, a step-by-step guide. Brian Smith is another guy who does a talk called When God Doesn't Help. He has just wonderful analysis of, when you believe in prayer and you believe in this theology, this mythology, and what happens when somebody's dying or you're dealing with trauma and you pray and you do all the things you're supposed to, and it doesn't make any difference because prayer doesn't make any difference. Joshua Bowen is a really cool guy. He's a researcher who he is a Syriologist, which means that he knows like the ancient languages of Assyria and Aramaic and all that. And he looks at the Bible stories and the translations, and he's going to talk about conceptions of the afterlife in the Hebrew Bible.
Oh, interesting.
And I have an Islamic scholar who is a professor of practical theology, and a practicing Muslim who's going to talk about toxic theology in the Islamic tradition. I got a couple of psychologists talking about how religious beliefs complicate the grief process. I have Pesach Eisen, who was raised in an Orthodox Jewish community and escaped from that. And Janice Selby, who was also raised in an Orthodox Christian community of some kind where she had robes and, like Mormon women with the modest clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's now a bisexual atheist rock musician.
Like you do.
Like you do. And a whole bunch of people like that. And one of the people I'm really excited about is David Lukoff. So I'm going to get a little academic here for a minute. In psychology, there's a book called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders, or something like that.
Right.
And if you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, they'll open up this book and they'll look for something that looks like your diagnosis, and it has a billing code so they can bill it for insurance.
Right.
Well, David Lukoff, with another colleague, wrote a diagnosis for that book called Spiritual or Religious Problem.
Interesting.
And it's actually a diagnosable disorder, that because anybody who has any problem, depression, addiction, anxiety, schizophrenia, whatever it is, somewhere in there's some religious content.
Mm.
And so his whole thing is psychology needs to start recognizing the presence of toxic theology in people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. So he's going to be there. And okay, so here's where my secret woo-woo credentials come out, because I do believe that there are other dimensions of consciousness beyond the physical, and I do think that our consciousness does survive the physical death of the body. And so we've got one person coming, Peter Panagore, who is a guy who died in a mountain climbing accident. He was airlifted off a mountain. He was clinically dead, flatlined, and he was revived. And he had this whole journey and experience while he was out. And so that's called a near-death experience. And there are so much research on that now, academic, bona fide, university-funded research. And I personally think that's real. But here's the thing. It doesn't have any religious content. And so Peter's talking about, his talk is called A Doctrine-Free Afterlife.
Mm.
And so, what if you just float away into the stars? And I don't know, but it's not what religion tells us it is. And then
How dare he? How dare he?
And then in that same vein, another speaker, Gregory Shushan, is a academic researcher from England, and he has studied these types of experiences throughout human history. So back what I was saying earlier, 30,000 years ago, cave paintings, and then, later different kinds of documents of people having these journeys to other worlds. Again, there's no Christianity, there's no Hebrew Bible, there's none of that, but people are leaving their bodies and going somewhere. And so he talks about what is in the historical record about out-of-body awareness, I guess is the best way I can say that. So, I believe in that, and I'm sticking to that. In fact, the other day I was doing an interview somewhere, and somebody said, "Well, Terry, what do you believe?" And I said, "I don't really believe anything, but if I had to say something, this is what I'd say. I would say that I think that it's a multiverse, not a universe, and that, how they say we only use 10% of our brain. Well, we only use 10% of our conscious awareness too. So there's, why would I deny that there's some aspect of our essence or consciousness, I don't want to say soul, because that has a bunch of stuff attached to it, but whatever, that that bounces around other levels of existence in the universe. I can't say that that's not true. So,
well, I love that the conference itself doesn't take a position, but I love that you're just bringing in some very interesting people with varying, academic and spiritual and life experiences, and just letting everybody sort of sort things out for themselves. I think that that's probably the right way to go.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a party.
I think so. You know what? You've convinced me. I'm coming. That's it.
No, we're going to have so much fun. And, it's presentations and stuff all day. There's lunch and dinner included. And then, at the end, we all hang out in the hotel bar and drink and, sort our way through this stuff,
Yeah.
So, and then on Sunday, because this is going to be in Portland, Oregon, I'm trying to put together an excursion. So a post-conference excursion where we all get on a big bus and it takes us up to the Multnomah Lodge, which is up in the Columbia Gorge. Have you ever been there, Dan?
Multnomah Falls is actually my screensaver on my phone.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever been there?
I took the picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, that's so great. So so we're going to Multnomah Falls for dinner on Sunday
Love it.
night.
Wow. It is gorgeous there. That's for sure.
It's crazy
beautiful. If our listeners, and I think quite a few of our listeners might be interested in coming to this thing. If they wanted to, how do they get to you? How do they sign up? What can they do?
So the website is deathgriefandbelief.com. Super easy. And just go there, click on the link to 2022 conference, and there's a subscribe button, many subscribe buttons all over the website. Just click on that and subscribe to the newsletter, which comes out once a month. And the newsletter has a bunch of articles about, there's always at least 2 articles about how atheists are excluded from research on religiosity, and the Pew and Gallup polls about the decline of religiosity in America. So we've got a lot of stuff like that in the newsletter and interesting articles of interest. And that's the way. So just go to the website and subscribe and listen to TGIA, because I'm sure you guys will be mentioning this again.
Yeah.
And just come and be with us, because it's going to be a blast.
If nothing else, you get to meet me and Frank, which that's
and
worth
everybody
it right
wants to
there.
meet you and Frank, because you and Frank are like mythical characters. Right?
Well, Terry Daniel, thank you so much. I look forward to our meeting in person in July, and I hope that some of our listeners will be there as well.
Well, I can't wait to give you a big COVID-free hug.
Absolutely.
And Frank and mysterious Frank,
he'll be there.
Okay, I'm so glad. I'm thrilled that you're there, and everybody listening. TGIA is the best. I hope to see you at the conference.
All right. Thanks again. Well, she is just a delight, and we're looking forward to going to that convention.
It's gonna be
That's
awesome.
Gonna be
yeah.
a lot of fun. I hope some of you decide to go. If you do, and you're quick about it, you can actually get, I think it's 50% off as an early bird rate up until I think February 15th. So go to the website and track that down, because it's going to be a lot of fun, and you'll get to meet the 2 of us, and you'll get to learn all about death and dying and all sorts of cool stuff. So thanks so much, Terry, for coming on the show. If you, dear friends, would like to comment on what Terry had to say or anything else, feel free to write into us, podcast@thankgodimatheist.com.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. The telephone number is 424-666-8442.
Yeah, go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/TGIAtheist, and click on the like button.
And if you'd like to join one of our members-only lounges, you can do so by going to our website, thankgodimatheist.com/members-only. They're great. Join them.
They are great. I agree. Thanks so much to the Red Rock Hot Club for the use of their beautiful music.
And thanks to Gordon Johnston for the use of his music.
And thanks to all of y'all for tuning in. We sure appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.